Welcome back to Joy Recovery Radio. And before we begin, we want to name something clearly. This episode may challenge ideas you've been taught about recovery or reconciliation, and that's intentional. Much of what's considered normal in betrayal recovery actually causes more harm, especially to betrayed partners. This is not a podcast about preserving relationships at all costs. It's about ending deception, restoring reality, and supporting autonomous, informed choice. Let's begin.
Today's episode is part one of a two-part conversation on DARVO. DARVO is a pattern that is both incredibly common and deeply damaging, especially in the context of betrayal and deception. DARVO is an acronym. It stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. In this episode, we're going to clearly define DARVO, show how it operates in real conversations, explain why it's so destabilizing for partners, and draw an important distinction between normal defensiveness and abusive DARVO role reversal. Let's begin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Joy Recovery Radio.
Season 2.
Season 2.
I'm excited about Season 2. We officially launch it today with a really big topic.
Yeah, it's one that I wanted to do last season, but there's so much content to cover. And I'm really glad that this is going to be the first one because this is something, for me, I think that this is one of the worst forms of abuse. And I hope that this episode gets a lot of traction from both the betrayers and the betrayed partners to recognize this form of abuse and stop it.
Yeah, with a lot of the men that I work with, when it comes to DARVO, which is what we're going to talk about today, and we'll define it in a moment, but a lot of the men that I work with, they didn't take a class in DARVO. They can't even spell DARVO, and their partner will tell them, "You're DARVOing me," and they're like, "What is she talking about? I don't understand what this DARVO is." And once you start understanding what DARVO is, you start seeing it everywhere. I've seen parents do it. I've seen it in the workplace. It's a very human thing. And I don't say that to minimize the harm that it causes to the betrayed partner, because I would agree with you. It's a pretty damaging form of psychological abuse. But I know when we use the word abuse, some of the men bristle and they get defensive when we use that term. And I don't want to minimize it by saying everyone DARVOs, that's a human thing to get defensive and to reverse it. But I also want to appreciate the fact that in the context of betrayal, it takes on a whole nother level of damage and manipulation and really a form of gaslighting for the betrayed partner.
I want to say something, and just from my perspective, this is my opinion. There are several types of abuse. There's emotional, psychological, financial, physical, emotional. There's a lot more than what I've named, but those are like the main ones. So DARVO is absolutely abuse, in my opinion. Elements of gaslighting, verbal attacks, denials, and blame shifting are all components of emotional abuse.
We subscribe to the Manuela model, and it's foundational to our work. And it uses the A word, and that is a very polarizing word. It uses the word abuse, and we have embraced that and adopted that. And for some of the men that I work with, when they have a hard time with that word, I just tell them, for starters, to make it more digestible, just replace it with the word harm for now. And would you be willing to admit that you have caused an incredible amount of harm to your partner? And the fact that we architected and constructed a secret sexual basement underneath the house where she lived and controlled and manipulated her reality is abuse. And it's a lapse of integrity. And when we DARVO, we're continuing to manipulate or distort her reality. So we're extending the abuse that started with the secret sexual basement. we're still not having a shared reality with our partner.
This is why we're such a good team, because I get so passionate about things and you have such a slower approach where it's like, let's, get comfortable with the word abuse and let's start by harm. And I'm just like, this is abuse. This is flat out abuse. And I'm calling it like I see it. So I appreciate that dynamic between us.
Well, we land the plane at the same airport, but we take a different approach in getting there. But the end result is, yes, this is abuse. There is a victim. It does cause trauma. And for a lot of men, using DARVO is an unconscious reflex that we hope we can raise awareness today with just what it is. Let's move it from unconscious to conscious, from unaware to aware, and let's appreciate the amount of damage it does to our partners. And let's stop the abuse. Let's stop the manipulation of her reality. So why don't we clearly define what is DARVO?
That stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. So it often appears when someone is confronted with behaviors that threatens their self-image, their ego, or is going to expose their wrongdoings. So an example, instead of responding with ownership and accountability, which is how we would want someone to respond if, let's say, we caught them lying, when a person is doing DARVO, first, they would deny the behavior or its significance. Secondly, with the A, it attacks the person who raised the concern. So there's an attack that happens. And then the last part is the R. It reverses the roles. So now they become the victim and the betrayed partner is seen as the aggressor. Towards the end of DARVO, the betrayed partner, the person who raised the concern, will end up defending themselves rather than being supported, and oftentimes end up apologizing to the betrayer for even bringing up the situation or questioning them.
Yeah, so it's a flip. It's a flip. And I find it interesting that the acronym DARVO came from a psychologist. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Freyd. And you know what she was studying? Betrayal, trauma, and abuse. And from her work, she saw this pattern just showing up over and over and over again, where the men in particular would deny that they did anything wrong, but then attack the person for pointing out a concern or an issue. And when I talk to the men about DARVO, I'll stay true to Dr. Freyd's original acronym, but sometimes I'll change the DA and just say, if you dodge accountability, if you don't take accountability, instead you flip it. And like, I've been wronged. You owe me an apology. I'm the victim here. When you dodge accountability and then you flip it on the person who brought the concern to you, that's DARVO.
So over time, a betrayed partner starts to have self-doubt and question themselves. Maybe I am overreacting. They'll become fearful of asking questions. They really begin to lose trust of their own perception and intuition. And then over time, some betrayed partners will actually start to blame themselves and absorb that and think that they are the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's a good litmus test for the betrayed partner in particular. If you start a conversation and you end up apologizing for bringing it up, or you feel bad, or you're second guessing, or you leave the conversation thinking, I'm never going to bring up that concern again, you've probably been DARVO'd. Yeah.
And here's some denial language. So I'll go through just DARVO, the acronym, and give some key phrases that signal DARVO is occurring. So for one, the denial language. You confront your partner with something that you've discovered. Let's say you've discovered he has been lying. So the denial language that the betrayed partner will receive from the betrayer is, it wasn't that bad. You're misinterpreting. That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're taking this out of context. I don't remember that. That didn't happen. That is the D. So there's this denial that happens. Attack language to look out for is the betrayer will start to say things like, you're crazy, you're insecure, you're being dramatic. You always do this. This is why no one can talk to you. You're the problem here. You're looking to argue. You're trauma seeking.
And that's when that's the flip.
That's
right
the
there.
flip.
When they attack, they have officially flipped roles. It's been reversed, and so we might minimize. That's part of denial. Even when we minimize it, it meant nothing to me, or I didn't mean to, or whatever language we use.
And then we have the role reversal language. So after the attack, then we'll hear things like, I'm the one being attacked. You're abusing me by bringing this up. You're hurting me more than I hurt you. Why are you trying to ruin everything? I have no privacy. I can't live like this. You're always looking through my stuff and invading my privacy. That is that role reversal language, where now the betrayer has flipped the script on us. And we're sitting there and we're listening to these verbal attacks, this blame shift, and it will intensify to the point to where we'll either shut down and by the end of it, maybe even apologize.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen situations where a betrayed partner will confront the betrayer and say something like, I found messages on your device that you hid. And he'll say something like, he'll minimize it. It's part of denial. And he'll say, that wasn't me, or that meant nothing, or that was work related. You misunderstood. But he'll attack her by saying, why are you invading my privacy? Why are you going through my messages? And then the whole reversal is something like, you're always in detective mode. You're always controlling me. I can't even message someone without your suspicion. This is so toxic. I don't deserve this. I don't have to put up with this. And now she feels bad that she brought it up in the front. And she's less likely to bring it up again.
Or the other thing is, by the end of the conversation, the betrayer is going to revert to very harmful behavior. So stonewalling, they'll leave, and then the betrayed partner feels abandoned. So in some way, by the end of DARVO, the betrayed partner is going to feel like bringing this up completely backfired on them. And now they've made the situation much worse. So what ends up happening is the betrayed partner doesn't feel like they can ever bring something up. And so they sit in their emotions, and the betrayer can't ever be a safe container. There can't be a healthy conversation. He can't accept where she is with her pain. He won't hear it. And if she brings it up, he'll stop her with DARVO. That, to me, is one of the worst forms of abuse. It truly is. You've shut the betrayed partner down. You've taken her voice away. You've silenced her. And then at the end of it, you've stonewalled, or you've left, or you've you're doing something that causes more harm.
Yeah.
The end goal for the betrayer is to shut her up. That is his goal. That is DARVO.
We want to pause briefly to name something important. DARVO doesn't stop because it's been identified. It stops when accountability is learned and practiced in safe, structured containers. If you're a betrayed partner, you're not required to educate, convince, or manage your partner's recovery. And if you're someone recognizing these patterns in yourself, awareness is only the starting point. We share more about our coaching work and how we approach integrity-based recovery at joy-recovery.com. We can help you understand what real change actually requires. Let's continue.
That's really key. And that's why I say DARVO is dodging accountability. Because if you go back to the example that I was mentioning earlier, she had a concern about hidden messages on his device. By the time he DARVOs, guess what happens? They never address the messages. He dodged accountability for that. And so it's very sly. And in fact, sometimes DARVO can even, it can even be masterfully pulled off in a way in one sentence, in one move. He can weaponize shame and DARVO his partner. He can say something, she can share a concern, and he collapses and just says, I know, I'm a monster. I'm a horrible husband. I'm the scum of the earth. And now what has happened? She oftentimes takes the bait, unfortunately, and will go from confronting him about the problem behavior to now being his caretaker and rescuing him and trying to soothe him. That's DARVO. And it's very subtle. It's very silent. It may not even be aggressive.
Right.
It may not even fit all 5 elements, but the flip happened. He dodged accountability through shame and self-collapse, and now she's in a caretaking role having to reassure him, and he gets to ignore the original concern in the first place.
I believe that is covert.
Yeah, I call it DARVO light, not to make light of it, but it may not meet the whole formula, but the role reversal has happened, and he's dodged accountability. He didn't have to address the problem behavior.
Right. Let's just do a scenario. I'm looking at your phone and I find suggestive material. Okay. The timestamp is obvious that this is not something that happened years ago. This is a recent new discovery, and I bring it to your attention. And I say, I was looking through your phone and I found this suggestive material. And I want to talk about it. This is a boundary violation. I'm deeply hurt.
Or even if you don't share that, even if you just say, I found something on your phone, can we talk about it? Something as gentle as that. How he responds determines, is this simply defensiveness or is it full-blown DARVO?
And by his immediate response, the betrayed partner, like I mentioned before, there are key words where you can determine where this conversation is about to go. If he shows up with, okay, let's talk about it. I think I know what you're talking about, and is very calm in his approach, the conversation could be productive. However, if he immediately goes to, I don't know what you're talking about, why are you looking at my phone? If there's any sort of defensiveness, it is going to be critical for the betrayed partner to just have that awareness and be able to raise the flag.
Yeah.
To stop the conversation.
And I think there's an important distinction right here that we can make at what we're talking about. And that is defensiveness by itself is not DARVO. And there is a difference, and it can be very slight, but I'll try to illustrate the distinction. To get defensive is a reflex. I feel like I'm being attacked. I feel like I need to defend myself. And initially, that can be the impulse that you feel when your partner questions you about something. But if you come back to impact, if you come back to dialogue, open, respectful communication about it, if you come back to the facts and eventually either ownership or repair or something like that, that's not DARVO. You started off feeling defensive, but you corrected in time and it didn't go to a flip. The flip didn't happen. DARVO is where you start off, you're feeling defensive, but now you somehow punish the person who's confronting you.
Mm-hmm.
And you rewrite who the real victim is here. And you dodge accountability. That's when you know that you've gone into DARVO. There are times where I initially feel defensive about something that we're talking about. And if I catch myself and correct that and come back to the facts, dialogue, respect, repair if there was any harm done or anything like, then that's not DARVO. But if I somehow punish you for bringing it up and make it less likely that you'll bring it up again,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no repair work and there's no ownership, and I dodge accountability, and I make you feel bad for bringing it up, then I've DARVO'd.
How to stop DARVO? Well, the moment you begin to recognize DARVO, you need to stop chasing the false reality. Red flags. Number 1, you raise a concern and they deny it ever happened. Number 2, you persist and then they start to attack your character or motives. Number 3, they are now the injured party. So those are the key flags for you, the betrayed partner, to really look for. One of the things that you can do when you're about to have a conversation and your partner has demonstrated DARVO in the past, go into the conversation setting some boundaries and be sure that you enforce them. So, an example, if this becomes blaming or attacking, I'm going to end the conversation. I'm not discussing this while being accused. We can revisit this with a third party if either one of us become dysregulated. Before going into the conversation and even setting those boundaries, you're going to want to be sure that your emotions are regulated. So that's going to be really critical. If you go into the conversation and you're not in a calm state, that is going to be a potential trigger for the betrayer. So he's going to start listening to defend immediately instead of listening to understand. So set yourself up for success. That's the whole point of this. You deserve answers. He needs to take accountability and ownership for the behavior. And the positive outcome is, what can you do to prevent this from ever happening again? That is the end result, the success of having a conversation.
One thing I can share with the betrayed partners in particular when it comes to DARVO is a dance, and it takes two. And you don't have to join this dance. Now, you may have to exit the conversation, and that might be exactly what he's trying to get you to do. But as soon as you start having to prove that you're not attacking him, or you're not controlling, or you're not crazy, you've just joined the dance. And you're not going to be able to get out of it. So there is this need for a boundary, like you're talking about, where she calls it out immediately. I appreciate the betrayed partners who say to the men, this is DARVO, and I'm not going to be a part of it. And they need to be called out. And often they come to me trying to understand, what is this DARVO that she keeps talking about? But I appreciate them calling it out and saying, we're not talking about my issues right now. You stay focused, or we're going to have this conversation later, or we're going to have it with a coach or a therapist. But we're not going to avoid this.
Right.
But I'm not going to defend myself right now. You're not going to DARVO me. You're not going to dodge accountability on this. We will have this conversation one way or the other, but we're going to stay on topic when we do.
Yep.
And I'm ending this conversation if you're going to attack me. And that's the boundary that you have to have. I don't do the DARVO dance. We're
Yeah.
not going to do that.
Absolutely. And what I tell the betrayed partners is stay anchored in your reality. Refuse the role reversal. Take a time out when you start to feel dysregulated. We might win the battle, but we'll lose the war, especially when emotions become heightened. Limit emotional supply. That is what sometimes the betrayer is looking for you to become dysregulated. So now they can truly become the victim. And then remember to enforce your boundaries. Go into the conversation with boundaries. Go into the conversation with emotional regulation. Set yourself up for success. When you see it, name it. When you feel that you need to take a time out, take the time out. I promise you, the conversation will go in circles if you do not exit when you're feeling dysregulated. Because oftentimes when we feel dysregulated, we lose thought, we lose our train of thought, and we're unable to convey what we truly want to say. We're emotionally responding.
Thanks for joining us for part 1. In part 2, we're going to focus on how to stop DARVO, what accountability actually looks like in real time, and what both partners need in order to exit this cycle without creating further harm. Until then, stay anchored in reality and integrity. We'll see you in part 2.
That wraps up another episode of Joy Recovery Radio. As we close, we want to leave you with this. Healing after betrayal isn't about moving on quickly or getting back to how things were. It's about living in reality. If this episode was helpful, you can subscribe, share it with someone who needs language for what they're living through, or explore our resources at joy-recovery.com. We'll be back next time with another conversation grounded in truth and real recovery. Until then, remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.